Have you ever had to make a change in your life due to something beyond your control? Have you ever considered how someone with chronic pain or neurodivergency navigates life, business, love, and travel? Today, we'll explore Donna Muccio's powerful story of resilience, creativity, and adaptation in the face of chronic illness and being neurodivergent. By the end of this episode, you'll learn how to better support loved ones who may be experiencing chronic pain or health conditions, how to adapt to changes in your life, be it health, business, love, and beyond, and you'll deepen your perspective that everyone has their own experience of the world and everyone deserves to travel in a way that feels supportive and inclusive. Hi, I'm Kelly Tolliday, founder of Transform with Travel, and your trusted guide to life-changing adventures. Here, we help you dream big, plan smarter, and embark on your next journey without stress or overwhelm. This isn't just about booking trips. It's about reimagining what's possible for yourself, one adventure at a time. Today, we're bringing you one step closer to your greatest travel dreams. So buckle up because we are about to take off. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Transform with Travel podcast, and welcome to the number 8 wellness travel podcast in the world, according to FeedSpot. Yep, you heard that right. We've been named amongst the top 10 wellness travel podcasts around the world. And I couldn't think of a better month to announce this news as we share the stories of incredible women in travel to celebrate International Women's Day. So thank you for being along for the journey with us for the past year and a half. Today's guest is Donna Muccio. Donna is a travel photographer and content creator from Miami, Florida. She was diagnosed with a rare condition that causes chronic pain in 2022 and has since been on a journey of learning how to adapt to life with chronic illness and neurodivergency. She also shares her passion for the outdoors and conservation on her social media pages and gives us a glimpse into her life with chronic pain. Ready to dive in? Let's go. With us today, we have Donna Muccio. Welcome to the show, Donna. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
We always start our episodes with our little travel game, Two Truths and a Lie. I know I'm throwing this on you literally on the spot because you did not know we were doing this today.
That's okay.
So I'd love for you to kind of see if you can trick me here with Two Truths and a Lie.
Okay, so I lived in a van for 7 months in San Francisco. I have seen the pyramids of Giza, and I did a farm stay in New Zealand.
Ooh, I know you're super eco-friendly and conservation, so New Zealand could be a good one that you've done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with the pyramids is the lie.
Nope, it was the
Oh
New Zealand
no.
one.
You're the first
I would love to
person.
do that.
You're the first person that I've gotten wrong yet. So good
Really?
job. Good job. You tricked me.
I also just made that up right now, so
No
I'm
way.
really proud
Well,
of
I guess
myself.
maybe that's a bucket list for you now it's just come out of your mouth.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
amazing. So you lived in a van for 7 months. What was that
Yes.
like?
It was both amazing and really challenging.
Yeah.
This was with ex-partner, and van life is something you really want to do with the right person because it can be real bad if you're not with the right partner because it's just bringing out just the best and the worst in you. But the concept of it, I absolutely love. I love tiny home living. I love being nomadic. I love being able to wake up to nature and just not like needing a lot. It's very freeing for sure.
That's incredible. And then Egypt. So you've been to the pyramids. What was that experience like? That's a total bucket list.
Yes, I was only there for a few days, but it was so impactful. I actually stayed at this kind of like hostel boutique hotel in Giza, and the owner of the place, for a small additional charge, will arrange a driver and a guide. And that was absolutely game changing because they just took care of us and took us everywhere and made us feel so at home and welcomed and safe. Egypt is absolutely mind blowing. I really recommend it for people who like history, especially that like kind of ancient Egyptian history, which is super fascinating.
Yeah, and just a completely different culture and way of living. Like, I feel like that would be one of those totally transformational trips where you walk away with a completely different worldview.
Yeah, it's a bit of a culture shock. So I would say for seasoned travelers, especially backpackers, they'd probably love it. But if you like quieter, calmer travel, maybe not so much.
Yeah, it's kind of reminding me a little bit of India, where you're just
Mhm.
like on high alert all the time. So you've traveled to 41 countries and you've even lived in Mexico. You're
Yes.
also well known for your photo shoots for elopements in other countries.
Mhm.
How did you catch the travel bug? When did it start for you?
So I went on my first Europe trip actually in high school with an art class. I believe it was either my junior or senior year of high school. And it was just this really lucky, amazing opportunity that I had to be able to go with my class and be able to, learn about the art there. We went to Italy. I don't remember exactly all the places we went, but I believe it was Rome, Venice, Florence, Assisi. And I mean, yeah, I think everyone's first Europe trip is really transformational. And then right after college, I actually booked a 2-week Europe trip with a friend through EF College Break, which was really amazing at the time to, at that age, have someone guide you and lead you and not like have to worry too much about the details. And that was to 7 countries in Europe. And that was just the absolute best experience. And then it just kept snowballing from there. The summer after that, I did a backpacking trip back in Europe to 11 countries and never looked back pretty much.
Like you just mentioned, everyone's first, and maybe it's not specifically Europe, but your first independent, whether it's with a group or not,
Mhm.
but independent of your parents or your caregivers or whoever that, whatever that looks like. It's
Yes.
always one of those realizations of, wow, I am my own person and I can make my own decisions. And especially when you can kind of break out of the mold of who you might have been in high school or college, it's always such a special and profound experience.
Yeah, the
So,
freedom aspect of it is a huge piece for me. I love that feeling of being able to live life on my own terms, go where I want, do what I want. So that's
yeah,
for sure a big part of it.
I can agree with that. Actually, one of my top core values, I literally have them on my phone, but number one is freedom. And it's everything
Mhm.
that I choose to do, whether it's a type of job or a project, or even down to whether, we grow a family or not. It comes down to, how much freedom do I have in that choice? So
Yeah.
I appreciate that sentiment. And you lived in Mexico for a period of time. Can you share your experience living in Mexico? And I'd love to debunk some of those stereotypes or myths that Americans especially hold against Mexico. What was your experience as an American living there?
Yeah, so before I moved to Mexico, I was doing van life, and it kind of got to the point where I was feeling really stuck, trapped, like this was not what I wanted to continue doing, but I didn't know where I wanted to go next. And I really needed to go on a trip to kind of get some clarity. For me, like when I'm feeling like I'm in that rut and I just need inspiration, I need clarity to go on a trip because it gives me that. So I actually went to Tulum and Mexico City with a friend of mine, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. I wasn't really expecting that. I had seen pictures of Tulum. This was kind of the time when I feel like Instagram travel blogging was like a huge thing. I mean, it still is now, but it was when it was like really growing.
What
And
year is this? Give us a timeline.
so this was 2018.
Right, right.
Yeah, so I was just following a lot of travel influencers who were going to Tulum and posting these amazing pictures. And I loved Tulum, but then I especially love Mexico City. So I just felt this urge to move there. And I came back. This was when I was my ex-husband at the time. And I kind of brought up the idea to him, and he thought it was crazy. And he was like, "What are you talking about? We can't move to Mexico." And then I said, "Come with me on a trip and see how you feel, because I'm telling you, you're going to love it." And went on a trip, and same thing happened to him. He was like, "We need to move here." So we ended up looking for apartments. We found a really cool apartment in a really artsy part of town, and it was amazing. We lived there for 2 years.
Wow. I didn't know it was
Mhm.
that long. Wow.
Yes, and I loved every aspect of it. As for the stereotypes and the misconceptions, I could write an entire novel on that because I just had the most amazing experience with the locals. I really never felt unsafe, especially in Mexico City. There are definitely parts of the city that, like any big city, you kind of get that creepy feeling at, you got to be careful of your belongings. But that happens to me in Miami, happens to me all over the US. But for the most part, I actually felt safer in Mexico City than I do in Miami. And the people are just absolutely amazing there.
I can totally feel that. I know when I travel to different parts of the world or when I was moving to Thailand, I got that all the time is, are you going to be safe? What's it like? And I'm like, I feel safer than I do in Miami. Again, be smart. Don't go out
Mm.
late at night into the alleys of Bangkok. But at the same
Yeah.
time, there's a level of community care that I found in other parts of the world that I don't
Mm.
necessarily find in our particular corner because we both live in South Florida. And I really do appreciate that. What was your language like over there? Did you already have a base of Spanish to start?
I really didn't. I had a very small base being born and raised in Miami, but I never really learned growing up here because my parents are not Hispanic. So I was never forced to learn. Trying to pick up the language for the first 6 months was extremely hard. And I thought, this is not possible. Like, I'm not going to be able to do this. But I think I was just really determined. I really loved the culture and I really loved the people. And I really loved the way that they speak Spanish there compared to South Florida. And that made me a lot more excited to really put in the work. So after that 6 month mark is when I really started to feel the difference and the improvement. And I would say that I'm fully conversational now, but definitely not fluent. I definitely struggle a lot still with more formal conversation, like anything business related. I would be really scared to do that in Spanish.
You wouldn't tick off the fluent in Spanish on a resume or something like that?
Maybe I really wanted the job, but
And you know
not
what?
quite.
Conversational is all you need to get by, especially in
Yeah.
people. What I find overseas is I'm definitely not at your level, but I did study and live with a host family in Costa Rica for a few months. And if you really want to learn a language, that has to be the way to do it. You have to thrust yourself into that culture because the cultural piece is almost just as important as the words themselves, and the
Mm.
nuance and the way in which they use the language as part of their emotional landscape as well. It's such a, and I'm speaking specifically for Costa Rica, but I know that it's
Hmm.
very similar across different Latin American countries. But if you have the chance to immerse yourself in a culture, at least for a couple months, that's probably one of the best ways to pick up the language. And so, speaking of being able to just move to another country, what were you doing for work at the time to be able to decide, okay, we're going to do van life for 7 months and we're also going to go jump over to Mexico for a little bit?
Yeah, so I have been a photographer since I was 13, and I started a wedding photography business in college. So I was doing wedding photography full time at the time, as well as starting to book elopement photography, was really my passion. And I also do commercial photography. I didn't get a lot of work in Mexico in the beginning. After a while of living there, I started to get more work there, but I mainly would have to travel home a lot to Miami and to other parts of the US for kind of my bigger wedding jobs and then come back.
Amazing. When did you realize that you could actually create a career that blended your love for photography and travel? Because apart from the weddings and the bigger jobs that you do, you're also a content creator. When did you kind of
Yes.
figure out that this lifestyle, this type of career was possible? Because when we're in middle school and then telling us what our litmus test is of what type of job we'd probably be best for, content creator was not one of those jobs. The same way that a
Yeah.
podcast cast host was not one of those jobs. So
Yeah.
when did the wheels start turning on that for you?
So I actually majored in entrepreneurship in college.
Wow.
I went to Florida State and they have a program there for that. Actually, when I was in the program, it was very new and it was only 40 students a year. So I had to apply to be able to get into the program. And I was very fortunate to have gotten accepted. Being in that environment really inspired me to be my own boss. And that's actually where I started my photography business. My first year in the program, we got to work on a business and we could choose whatever we wanted. And I decided to focus on wedding photography. And my professor at the time asked me, okay, what do you need to start your wedding photography business? And at the time, I didn't have a full frame camera, which is basically a higher quality camera that is definitely more ideal for professional work. And I said, I need this camera to feel confident photographing a wedding. And he said, okay, how much is it? And at the time, it was $1,300. And he wrote me a check and he said, get this camera, you can pay me back after you book some weddings. And I actually had a client at the time who already had reached out to me and some engagement photos for her. Told her, I need to book this wedding. I ended up booking the wedding and I paid him back 2 weeks later after I got the deposit. And he was just blown away that I did that. And he would just tell everyone, tell like his other professors. So it was a really cool story. And I'm just so thankful in my life to kind of propel me.
Such a testament to how just one educator or one person in your life can give you the confidence and the support to follow your dreams. That's amazing. So, you have been in the content creation game, the photography game for a really long time now, and you've seen a lot of shifts and changes in the industry. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to an aspiring content creator, perhaps looking to be within the travel industry now?
I would definitely say to really focus a lot on in-person networking. I think with social media and the way things have turned, there is so much pressure to find success through your social media presence and following and engagement and brand deals and all this stuff. But I think that, at least for me, pretty much all of my success has come down to real in person relationships and networking and people that I've met along the way and just meeting the right person at the right time and not so much through social media. For me, I like to use social media as kind of my portfolio and my outlet for expression, but not as main source of how I actually find clients.
Yeah, I think that's really, really useful advice. And that the piece about getting from online to offline, because that's when people really start wanting to invest in your relationship, whether it's professionally or personally. I think there's so much misconception that you don't have to go do the work offline either, or seeking out the content creator conferences or the things that you can do that are going to really bridge the gap between your online presence and your personal presence. That's really powerful. I don't know about you, but I still feel anxious before a travel day between the packing, especially with the kids and the crowds in the airports, or perhaps even like turbulence on a plane. And even when I get stuck in large crowds, I can feel the anxiety starting to bubble up within me, whether it's the anxiety on the day or even when you get to your destination and there's just so much to do and so much to see. I think we've all felt the stress of travel in some way. And now I've visited over 45 countries. I've hosted retreats and tours around the world. You've bet I have experienced all of the highs and lows of travel, things like flight delays and natural disasters, losing luggage, even dealing with toddler tantrums, with adult tantrums, being stuck in airports overnight, all the things all the time. And with over 17 years of yoga practice under my belt, and I've been teaching for nearly a decade now, I can truly say that I've tried all of the mindfulness practices, all of the breathwork techniques, again, all the things all the time. I've learned how to apply concepts of mindfulness and to navigate travel stress and just being able to be in my travel experience with more presence and more joy and not letting those travel mishaps and stress, things that are bound to happen inherently when you step out of your comfort zone. I'm not letting those travel mishaps kind of ruin my trip as a whole. I'm here as your trusted co-pilot to help you experience the vacation of your dreams by applying the principles of mindfulness. So that's why I'm so excited to announce that our ebook, which we launched late last year called The Mindful Traveler, it's actually up for grabs right now for free. So run to our website, www.transformwithtravel.co, and you can check out how to download that for free. Get the freebie right in your inbox. You'll have an account with us as well to be able to get all of the practices, the strategies, the techniques, the journal prompts, the podcast episodes. It was all designed to guide you to a more easeful travel experience no matter what happens. And there's even a meditation for turbulence and anxious flyers, which I know a lot of us are feeling the stress of flying within the US right now with all of the news lately. So this ebook is for you. It's for free and it is for you at transformwithtravel.co, or there's a link in the show notes. Get it for free and embark on a journey of tranquil travels with our new ebook, The Mindful Traveler. So back in 2022, you were diagnosed with HEDS, a rare inherited connective tissue disorder that causes joint hypermobility, pain, along with a whole slew of other systems. Would you mind walking us through that experience from, living in Mexico and moving back home and then going through the pandemic and all of that, and then getting diagnosed with this? I know it was a really long journey for you to get a diagnosis to start with. I would love for you, if you feel comfortable, explaining your experience with that.
Absolutely. So I've actually suffered from chronic pain since I was 8 years old. It started after a horseback riding accident. I grew up riding horses, and at the time, I was riding a horse that was just giving me issues and threw me over a jump, and I fell flat on my back. And from that day forward, I've had just severe chronic back pain, and I, went to get MRIs and see all these doctors, and they all said everything's normal. So I pretty much spent my life going to chiropractors, massage therapists, acupuncturists, doing all the things just to get relief, never finding any answers at all. And I eventually started seeing a physical therapist here in Miami who I was working with. And she said, "Have you ever heard of this condition called Hypermobile Ehlers Danlos Syndrome?" And this was, I guess, mid 2022. And it was actually maybe 2 weeks prior I had first come across HEDS, I believe, on TikTok.
Of
I had
course.
never heard of it prior, and started having the wheels turn in my head. And when she said that, I started doing research, and it was like this light bulb went off, and I realized, wow, this is my life story. This explains everything. So I ended up pursuing a formal diagnosis. I thankfully was able to find a geneticist here in South Florida who specializes in connective tissue disorders, and he diagnosed me, and since then have really been dealing with a lot of issues related to HEDS, and just seeing a lot of different specialists and learning so much about the condition and how to manage it and how to manage the multiple comorbidities that it often causes.
The fact that you were dealing with so much pain for so long and the job that you're in, especially with wedding photography, where you're on your feet and carrying heavy equipment and then traveling a lot, it's hard on your body. I mean, was it just one of those things where it was just your normal, where you just learned how to deal with that?
Absolutely. Wedding photography is extremely stressful and extremely hard on the body, but I found that I really learned to thrive in that chaos. And also just the excitement, the adrenaline of the day really got me through, because I did and do love photographing weddings, but I actually got to the point in 2022 where I was traveling nonstop for weddings. I was shooting destination weddings, destination elopements, and my body was just breaking down. And I had to come to the hard decision to close my business. And that was 2 years ago now, 2.5 years ago, that I decided to stop photographing weddings. I still take on elopement work, but I'm mainly now focusing on other types of photography like portrait work and some smaller commercial jobs that don't require a lot of travel, just because of how hard it is on my body to combine that work with also traveling.
I can imagine there would be a level of identity grief almost, of like you've built this up that you are this premier sought after wedding photographer who gets to travel the world for her job, and then having to accept that fact that that might have to change. I mean, I can only imagine that kind of experience. What or who helped you through that transition?
That is definitely hitting the nail on the head. I have gone through a massive amount of grieving my career, because I have prided myself so much in my work and my success. Not that, my identity was rooted in that, but it was something that brought me joy. It brought me freedom, both with being able to travel and the financial freedom that it brought me to be able to live life on my own terms. And I lost a lot of that. I would say my current partner is probably the number one thing that has helped me through this time. I was also going through a divorce in 2021, and my ex partner was involved in my business. So there was a bit of struggle with transitioning out of that. And then my current partner, we've been together for a little under 3 years, and he is not a photographer, but he's been learning a lot, and he's actually really good at photography, and he just kind of assists me. So he's been just the biggest supporter and help in wanting to help me be able to still live my dreams while having to adapt and live life at a much slower pace.
Yeah. Like you said, the freedom to choose when, where, how fast, how slow is
Hmm.
people take that for granted. That word that you have just mentioned a few times now, adapt. I think that's something that us humans particularly struggle with. What have you found that you've learned about yourself through this adapting? Like, what kind of mindset has it taken for you to accept, I guess is a word that could be used,
Mm.
accept the adaptation to your life, try to seek balance, I guess? Like, I mean, balance is a shitty word, but
No,
you know what
I
I
love the
mean?
word balance. Yeah, so I would say one of the big things was realizing my own internalized ableism and how I never considered myself to be disabled
Mm,
until I got my diagnosis, but I just wasn't aware and didn't have the awareness of invisible disabilities because essentially that's what EDS is. There is a lot going on the inside that you can see on scans, and there is physical evidence, but on the outside, the outward presentation, people with EDS often look like young, healthy females, and no one would ever know what's actually going on inside of our bodies. So that was and is still very hard for me to really accept the word disability for myself because it inherently feels limiting. It's like almost triggering to accept because I don't want to feel like I'm limited, but then you see disabled people around the world who are really challenging that and showing that disability doesn't have to mean that you're less capable or that you're limited. You just have to learn to do things in a different way. And if anything, that is an amazing quality and such a sign of resilience and strength to be able to learn how to adapt.
yeah, I'm sure it's changed. I mean, at least for me, just hearing your story, it changes the perspective as well of people like myself on podcasts being like, well, just get out in the world and go see it. And it's like,
Mm.
well, that's not a reality that everyone can take all the time. It's definitely not something that could limit you forever, but it's not just as easy as hopping on a flight. There's things that you have to consider when you have a body that's presenting pain consistently. It's not as easy. So I think it's one of those things just kind of like shaking up the paradigm of the advice that we just give to everyone because they might look a certain way. They don't look like they might be with pain or have some sort of condition that's preventing them from living the life that they want to.
A huge piece for me was actually about 3 or 4 months after my EDS diagnosis, I also got diagnosed with autism and ADHD.
Oh, wow.
And this was something that I, again, have never been told before that point. It was never brought up. I didn't know much about it. My perception of it was very skewed. The closest thing I had to understanding any of these things was my current partner has ADHD. And that's where I started to learn, but it was actually a physical therapist who specializes in EDS that I was working with at the time, right after my diagnosis, that I was telling her, I feel like these telehealth calls, I'm learning a lot, but I feel so drained after. I almost feel like it's detrimental for me to have these telehealth calls because I just feel exhausted. And then I feel like I'm kind of setting myself back. And she was the first person to be like, have you ever considered you're neurodivergent? And like, just the way you process things, it's more draining. And I was just like, what? And I started researching it and I was like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. And ended up again pursuing a formal diagnosis, got diagnosed. And that piece for me, I would say, not that it's bigger than the EDS piece, but it's just as impactful in my life because so much of our lived experience is the sensory, brain processing experience. And especially when I need to travel for a job or even just personal travel, the amount that goes into that, the stress, the planning, you're breaking up your routine. Like there's so much that affects someone who is highly sensitive. And I did not realize how much that was actually affecting me and contributing a lot to my pain and my flare ups if I was feeling really anxious before the trip or really stressed or not prepared or physically like I didn't have the help I needed with carrying my bags and I was just putting too much on myself.
Wow, there's so much running through my head right now. But one thing that's standing out is all of this was presenting for you without the diagnosis. You just didn't know that it was
Mm,
there. And so,
yeah.
did you ever talk to other travelers or other people and be like, do you also feel like this is an exhausting thing? Or did you just, again, think it was just your part of your normal?
I think I completely normalized it. And I think the combination of having both autism and ADHD really creates a personality for a lot of people that gets addicted to travel because the autism side makes you really hyperfixate on certain things you're passionate about. So my hyperfixation, could be travel. But the ADHD side makes you bored very easily and you just are constantly seeking novelty to the point that it's like a drug, like you are actually seeking dopamine. And that has been my life story for me. Traveling is filling this like chemical deficiency, not that it's
No, I know it.
inherently
Yeah.
harmful, but we don't ever think about what's going on in our brains when we're having these experiences and what it's doing for us chemically. So I think now having that awareness helps me understand better that it's okay to have times where I'm living a normal life, a normal routine, and not traveling at a really fast pace all the time.
Yeah, I was just about to ask that. Like, how, now that you know what you know, and now that you know how you can support yourself in a different way, I know that you recently just went to Ireland, and I'm just frothing
Mhm.
over all of your videos because it's one of my favorite countries in the
Uh,
world. Now that you know, getting to know yourself a little bit better, how do you support yourself now when you travel versus, I guess, in the past where you didn't know that there was any other way to be? Like, what do you do differently to support your body and your nervous system?
So I think one thing was the destination and its climate. I knew that traveling to Ireland, we went in end of October, beginning of November, would be really good for me because of the weather. I struggle a lot with heat intolerance, and the weather just made it so much easier for me to be able to walk and do some light hiking and do things. And as soon as I got home, I just immediately felt the weight of like the heat and how it affects me. The other thing I would say is I like to plan a lot going into the trip so I don't feel stressed on the trip and I feel like, okay, I know the game plan. That helps me a lot with reducing my stress when I travel. Not even just the itinerary for the trip, but a lot of it is just the planning of what is the game plan for the airport? What time am I getting there? Are we going to a lounge? Do I have the location for that? Do I need to reserve it? Budgeting extra time at the lounge to be able to feel really relaxed. And then having someone with you who can help you. For me, my partner helps me carry things that helps me, relieve a lot of the physical stress. And for me, I actually use wheelchairs when I go to the airport because me just reducing the amount of physical stress on my body and the amount of steps I have to take in a travel day to just make my body feel as good as possible helps me feel better when I get there.
That's incredible. And it really makes you like it's allowing yourself to reduce the amount of uncertainty that might cause some anxiety, which would then cause stress levels and that impacts your body. And
Mm-hmm.
really being intentional. We talk a lot on the podcast here about intentional travel experiences
Mm-hmm.
and being clear with you picked your destination based on how comfortable that you could be in that moment. And there might be another destination at another time that would be better because of that. And I think that's a really powerful way to just accept like this. I still want to travel. I still want to have my freedom. I still want to do what I want to do. I'm just going to have to modify it in a slightly different way so that I can still go do those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. It's hard. It's hard learning to accept that you have to do things differently and it may not be the way that you want to do things, but it's also empowering to know that I could be inspiring other people to recognize they can still travel. It just might look different.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. And then the reason why, like, specifically we're interviewing in the month of March is because I'm highlighting amazing women who are inspiring travelers around the world in their different areas and their different lived experiences. So I just appreciate you being here so much. I really wanted to ask, apart from finally getting a diagnosis with your HEDS, which I know is getting a diagnosis can feel like overwhelming, but also a bit. I have endometriosis and I went 10 years with pain that I just was told, go see a psychologist. There's nothing wrong with
Wow.
you. Keep going, take the birth control, until eventually I finally found a doctor that listened. So on one level, it's like, oh my God, I actually have this thing. And then on the other
Wow.
hand, it's uplifting, like, yes, thank you. It's validating. It's not all in my head. So apart from
Mhm.
getting that diagnosis, which I'm sure was a whole range of emotions, what did you really need in those years leading up to that time or during that time? Like, what did you need from the people in your community during that time that you wish that maybe you didn't get?
Oh, first of all, I also have
Ugh,
endometriosis, so I totally relate.
endo sisters.
Yes, and it's so common. It's just wild. But I would say a healthy relationship and a safe space is probably the number one thing that I lacked. And I know that being in that unhealthy environment for so long really contributed to the, physical manifestation of my health now. And, I'm having to really work on trauma healing, trauma therapy, somatic work, nervous system regulation to try and unpack all of that. But it's very difficult being neurodivergent, experiencing trauma. So that would be the biggest thing. And I feel like now, there's a lot of friendships that I have that I've had for a long time, since long before my EDS diagnosis, that almost see me as the same person I was before my diagnosis. It's almost like they don't recognize that I now have this diagnosis and this is who I am and what's going on. So I think like just learning to ask for help more would have been huge, because the thing was, I always have been disabled and I just wasn't asking for help. I was just suffering. And, the people in my life saw me as perfectly able bodied, perfectly capable, didn't have these struggles when that was not the case at all. I just wasn't really voicing my needs.
And what do you wish people knew or understood about someone who is living with a chronic illness or chronic pain?
I would say that, you know, we want people to talk about it with us. We want people to ask us about it. I think a lot of people in my life are afraid to bring it up because they don't want to be a downer. It's like they almost don't want to remind me of it. So they're like, let's just talk about other things. But actually, what is really healing is feeling validated and feeling seen in our struggles, because as women, we experience emotions so deeply, and such a painful experience. Feeling invalidated makes the pain worse. So I definitely want people who have a chronically ill person in their life to know that it is okay to talk about it and ask people, what are you struggling with right now? Because it's okay to talk about hard things and the things we struggle with.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of when you're going through, which is a lifelong process, but when you're going through something like grief, if you've lost somebody in your life. I have a really close friend who lost a family member, and I was really close with their family, and I would message them funny things that I remembered about him. And
Mm.
like, she'll come over my house and we'll just straight up be like, oh my God, remember when he did this? And we'll like laugh about it. And she's like,
Wow.
I only have like two people that still talk about him because I want to talk about him.
Mm.
And it's kind of the same way with this, like, grief is invisible for a lot of people from the outside looking in, and it's similar to pain. It's your lived experience on a daily basis. How can you not share that with the people in your life? And I think other people are more worried about opening the floodgates or not wanting to upset you, but it's actually more
Yeah.
upsetting when you're not able to talk about it. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that will help others who want to help, and that people want to help. They just don't know
Mm.
how. And I think that will help, hopefully, people open up, and people in their lives, relationships, because chronic illness and pain, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people struggling with a condition under that realm.
Mm. Yep, 100%. Likely every person listening is either chronically ill themselves or know someone who is. You just may not be aware of it.
And speaking of listeners who might be dealing with pain or illness at the moment, what do you want to say to those listening who may be experiencing chronic illness or chronic pain, or perhaps they're still trying to advocate for themselves for a diagnosis? What do you want to say to those people listening?
I would say the advice that I am often given that I really struggle to really live myself, which is to not be so hard on yourself. For me, I really have a hard time showing myself grace. I always feel like I need to be doing more. I could be doing more to feel better. Or if I use up too many spoons in a day, like I should have known, I blame myself. But just showing yourself the human empathetic grace of like, this is hard that you're going through this. Like, this is not something that humans are designed to experience and have to carry, especially in a world now where we're so isolated in terms of community. We used to live in tribes and have help. And now it's like we are just left to do so much on our own. So just recognizing that it's okay that you're having a hard time. If you have ADHD and you have like a doom pile somewhere and you haven't been able to do the laundry, not beating yourself up about it. Work with someone who can help you find tools and help you find that ease so it doesn't continually stress you, but don't blame yourself.
It's so beautiful. And I think anyone listening, with, whether they have chronic illness or not, that's really a life lesson that a lot of us is a lifelong lesson we're working on. And in terms of kind of what's next for you, in terms of what's on the horizon, it doesn't have to be like a professional success, or like, what are you most looking forward to in the next stage or the next year?
I would say I'm really looking forward to exploring new hobbies outside of photography and travel, because these have been my passions for so long and they will always be my passions. But it's time for me to explore something that really excites me that I can do from home that doesn't require a lot of spoons. And something that I'm really interested in is actually learning how to DJ. So
Oh,
yeah, I am super passionate about music. I actually started getting into music festivals a few years ago, around 2021. And that's like another way that I kind of get to express that desire for like travel and adventure combined with like a love for music and not needing to travel internationally. So yeah, that's my next passion project.
I love that. Coming at a club near you, DJ Donna. DJ Donna.
I need to think of a DJ name. I've been brainstorming. So if anyone has any ideas.
I love that. Thank you so much, Donna, for sharing your experience and really being open and vulnerable to sharing what like the last few years have been like for you, and really opening, like you said, the eyes of people who from the outside looking in might not know that someone like yourself is struggling on a day-to-day basis, and how we can really be more compassionate towards each other.
Mm,
Everyone's carrying something. We end these episodes with 3 rapid fire questions that I did
okay.
not share before. So we'll
Okay.
see what comes up for you. So, number 1 is, what country or place has made the biggest impact on you?
Definitely Mexico. I obviously lived in Mexico for 2 years. I've traveled to 18 states in Mexico.
Wow.
It is absolutely a country you need to visit if you haven't been. It is beautiful, and the people are even more beautiful.
Incredible. Number 2, what's your must have travel item? What do you need to have with you when you're on the go?
If it's an overseas trip, jet lag medicine. I use two different brands. One is called No Jet Lag and one is called Jet Zone. And it's a homeopathic medicine and it really, really helps. I took it on the way to Ireland and I pretty much had no jet lag. So,
Oh, like
yeah,
you
it's
take it when
amazing.
you're trying to sleep on the plane, or you take it when you land and you sleep there?
So you take it when you take off and then you take it in like 2 hour intervals. But if you're sleeping on the plane, you can even extend it past that. So that's what I did. I think I took like maybe 3 to 4 of the pills in total. And it just has like relaxing herbs. And I don't know how it's able to do it, but it works for me.
That is awesome. I will check that out. And the
Yeah.
last one is, what has been the biggest life lesson that you've learned while traveling?
Oh man. I would say that there is so much beauty in the things and the people that are different than you. There's so much to learn. We absolutely do not have all the answers. We never will. And just have a desire to be curious and to seek to understand people that are nothing like you.
Wow. We really need that we really
Right
needed that.
now.
We need it right now.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Donna. And I'd love for you to be able to share, if people wanted to connect with you, say hi, say thank you for an amazing episode, how can they do that?
Yeah, so I'm at It's Donna Irene on Instagram, and I actually am starting a new blog called The Adventuring Zebra, which you can find on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok.
Incredible. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Transform with Travel podcast. If you have a friend or a loved one you were thinking of during this episode, spread a little love and share this episode with them, someone who could use a little inspiration. And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe to the podcast as well. To learn more about us, head to www.transformwithtravel.co, and I'll see you on the next episode. This is your reminder to keep on exploring.